Every day, global businesses commit to massive strategic decisions, from designing new product lines to expanding into entirely new international territories. Basing multi-million-dollar investments entirely on executive intuition or anecdotal evidence carries an enormous amount of financial risk. To mitigate that risk, organizations rely on market research. Market research is the systematic collection, analysis, and interpretation of information specifically designed to guide marketing decisions. This formalized approach dates back to the 1930s. In its earliest days, market research literally meant counting physical inventory. Auditors would walk into grocery stores, manually tallying the rows of canned goods on the shelves to accurately calculate a brand's market share. Over the decades, those physical audits evolved. Modern researchers apply complex statistical models and predictive analytics to measure consumer behavior and extract hidden insights from massive datasets. As global competition has intensified, relying on guesswork is a mathematical liability. Objective data serves as the essential map required to steer an accurate and profitable business course. Every formal market investigation begins with a foundational document called the brief. This is where a company explicitly states its core business problem and outlines the exact information it needs to uncover. The client, known as the research sponsor, uses this brief to clarify their end goal. They must define exactly what commercial action they plan to take once the findings are delivered. The brief is then handed over to specialized external agencies. This handover establishes a necessary objective boundary between the executives making the final business decisions and the researchers gathering the raw evidence. The agency responds with a proposal, or a return of brief. This document acts as a strategic blueprint, detailing how they will conduct the investigation, what methods they will use, and how much it will cost. This flowchart outlines the systematic nature of that process. It follows a rigorous multi-step framework that moves steadily from commissioning the study and designing the method all the way down to the final analysis and reporting. A problem well defined in the initial brief is a problem half solved. It takes a subjective internal worry and transforms it into a highly structured, measurable project. Before any fieldwork actually begins, the agency maps out the project's timeline and scope. A typical study requires several weeks to progress from sample recruitment and questionnaire design through to the final presentation. The scale of that fieldwork depends entirely on the market type. In business-to-consumer or B2C research, target audiences span millions of people. For fast-moving consumer goods, researchers rely on massive sample sizes to accurately extrapolate their findings to the general public. Business-to-business, or B2B markets, operate under very different rules. Here, the total population of buyers is much smaller, which completely changes the methodology for selecting a representative sample. B2B researchers frequently apply the 80-20 rule. This is the economic principle that 20% of the companies in a specific market usually account for 80% of the total industry sales. Within those dominant companies, purchases are rarely made by one person. B2B research targets the decision-making unit, or DMU. This is a complex group of individuals across technical and production and finance departments who all set specifications and influence the final order. Because of this complexity, finding the correct person to interview is critical. Surveying the wrong decision-maker yields highly inaccurate data, regardless of how perfectly the questionnaire is designed. Once the audience is targeted, fieldwork often kicks off with qualitative research. This phase relies on small samples and focuses on empathy, seeking to understand the deep, underlying meanings and values consumers attach to a specific brand. Researchers gather these insights through focus groups and extended depth interviews. The moderator often uses a technique called laddering, repeatedly asking why to peel back the conversational layers until the respondent reveals their true, unvarnished motivation. With those motivations mapped out, the study moves to quantitative research. This phase targets large samples, often hundreds or thousands of people, to extract hard statistical measurements of those exact behaviors and attitudes. This table shows how researchers pair their specific methods to the commercial information required. If a company needs to measure pricing effectiveness, they utilize conjoint analysis, whereas testing broad brand impact requires a blend of e-surveys and focus groups. Qualitative research provides a diagnostic look at what might be driving a trend, while quantitative research delivers the representative data required to establish statistical confidence. The two schools work in tandem. One identifies the hidden motivations of the buyer, and the other proves the exact scale of that behavior across the wider market. When fieldwork concludes, the agency is left with thousands of rows of raw data. Analysts must then code the responses and cross-analyze the results to uncover actionable patterns. Their primary tool is cross-tabulation. Cross-tabulation is a statistical process that displays the joint distribution of two or more variables, allowing researchers to compare how different demographic groups answered the exact same questions. This chart plots the likelihood of a customer recommending a company on the horizontal axis against their actual share of wallet on the vertical axis. Mapping the data this way reveals hidden relationships between stated brand loyalty and actual spending habits. By isolating specific clusters, like this group with high loyalty but low spend, companies can immediately identify segments that require highly targeted marketing interventions to increase their purchase volume. This level of interpretation requires modern data analysts to act as sophisticated consultants, converting raw statistical noise into clear, actionable frameworks. All of this analysis is ultimately compiled into the final report. Today, this rarely looks like a dense academic paper. It is typically a highly visual presentation deck, optimized for clarity and maximum impact in a boardroom setting. Within that presentation, the researcher has an obligation to be explicit. They must clearly distinguish which parts of the report are hard, verified facts, and which parts are their own strategic interpretations of the market. The document is then handed back to the executives who originally commissioned the study. They can now replace their initial anecdotal assumptions with strictly vetted, objective intelligence. The entire architecture of this industry exists to systematically answer the most basic question a business can ask about its customers: why? By answering that question, market research provides organizations with the exact clarity they need to act with confidence in an uncertain world.